Your spice cabinet is crowded, your dinner plans are unstable, and somehow a tiny packet of seasoning still thinks it runs your house. We're gonna fix that today. If you're buying those little grocery store jars for about $6 a piece, or grabbing seasoning packets full of salt, filler, and vague disappointment, I regret to inform you that your pantry has been running a small but very organized scam.
Did you know that?
We're making 12 homemade seasoning blends that replace a ridiculous amount of jars, dusty packets, and duplicate nonsense taking up space in your cabinet right now. We're clearing the counters, lining up the bulk jars, and doing this assembly line style because I do not want to arrive at 5 p.m. and stare into the kitchen like it's about to reveal a prophecy.
Oh.
And yes, this time I am giving you the exact recipes right here on the screen like a civilized person. No link hunt, no mystery, no seasoning riddles. We are getting our life together one jar at a time. First up is taco seasoning because frankly it's been carrying weeknight dinners for years. So for a normal batch, here is the actual formula. 1 tablespoon of chili powder, 1.5 teaspoons of ground cumin, a teaspoon of salt and black pepper, half a teaspoon of paprika, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, onion powder, and dried oregano, and then 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne if you want a little heat and a little character. Now on a regular weeknight, a small batch is fine, but this is a bulk prep day. I take that base recipe, multiply it by 10, sometimes even 20, because I've got pounds of ground beef that I'm going to be bulk prepping, and when dinner is moving fast, I don't want to stop and tear open a stack of tiny paper packets like I'm some sort of seasoning intern. I want 1 jar, 1 scoop, and my momentum fully intact. Future you is going to be extremely pleased with this decision, and if you're watching this on your TV right now, this is your cue to commit a tiny act of kitchen theft. Grab your phone and take a picture in 3, 2, 1. In my house, taco night is basically an emergency response plan, because some nights it can just be dinner, but other nights it's the only thing standing between me and full domestic collapse. If you flip over one of those store-bought packets, the ingredients list reads like it was paid by filler. Maltodextrin, anti-caking agents, vague nonsense, and I'm offended on principle.
Yeah, life is tragic enough without somebody else's tragedy.
This is where the jar starts earning its keep, because this meat is not just dinner, it's infrastructure. It might go into the freezer in bags that lay nice and flat, or it's going to go into canning jars where I can just go ahead, open the lid, dump it into a pot, add my seasoning, and move on with my life. Once it's done, the kids are in here building wraps like it's an open-air taco bar, and no one has been dramatic for at least 6 minutes. Basically, I can pull this out, heat it up, and look far more organized than I felt when I made it, which frankly is one of my favorite kitchen tricks. Alright, quick pivot, because this one lives next door to taco seasoning, but has an absolutely different personality. Think your oldest child and your youngest child. This is fajita seasoning, and no, they are not the same thing wearing different jackets. Taco season is earthier, and it's heavier on the cumin. Fajita seasoning is built more for color and flavor, and that sizzling skillet situation where the chicken and the steak and the peppers all taste like they know exactly what they're doing. The formula is this: 1 tablespoon of chili powder, 2 teaspoons of cumin, smoked paprika, and garlic powder, a teaspoon of onion powder and granulated sugar, half a teaspoon of salt and black pepper, and then 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne if you want that extra little heat. It's louder, it's smokier, it's sharper than the taco seasoning, and this is the one when I really want that restaurant-style flavor without having to leave my house and pay $14 for 3 strips of an onion. So get your phones out and take a picture of this one too. And this right here is exactly why I wanted to redo this video properly, because these blends show up in so many of the meals I make, but the first time around, the actual recipes were apparently playing hide and seek. So this time, we're doing it like grown adults and putting everything right on the screen where you can see it. Because once these jars are made, dinner just gets a whole lot easier. I coated the pork in fajita seasoning, seared it in the skillet, and let that smoked paprika, garlic, cumin do exactly what it's supposed to. Now, you can do this in the traditional fajita way. I chose to go a different route and switch it up because I'm a little chaotic like that. I added some Spanish rice and lettuce and guacamole salsa, and suddenly this dinner was just exceptional. I mean, I really love food, if you haven't noticed already, and I'm telling you, this was absolutely exceptional. And the next one that earns a permanent place on the shelf is poultry seasoning. If you're buying chicken in bulk to save money but seasoning every tray with the same salt, pepper, garlic powder routine, honestly your family's going to start acting like chicken is a punishment. And honestly, they probably have a case. 2 tablespoons of dried basil, dried rosemary, paprika, and dried mustard, and dried parsley. 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, ground thyme, onion powder, black pepper, and dried dill. 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of dried sage, and 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne for that extra little pop of heat. So what you get here is a seasoning blend that actually has some architecture. The mustard gives it backbone, the basil, rosemary, thyme, parsley, dill, sage keeps it all from getting flat, and the paprika gives it color so your chicken does not come out looking emotionally unseasoned. I make this in giant batches because I use it constantly. Roasted chicken, sheet pan dinners, turkey meatballs, chicken soup, chicken breast, drumsticks, thighs, all of it. This is one of those blends that can truly save an unreasonable dinner. If you want the exact measurements for the blend that rescues an awful lot of chicken around here, grab your phone and take a picture in 3, 2, 1. And just so we're all working from the same case file, I did have to ease up on the black pepper a little in this house, because apparently visible pepper specks are received as a personal attack by my 7-year-old. All you have to do is season the chicken, put it in the freezer, pull it out on a night that you need something really delicious, put it in the oven, and it comes out looking like this. Look at this color. This is not a sad chicken dish. Add some rice and carrots on the side, and you just bought yourself a much easier evening. Alright, blend number 4 is chili seasoning, and this one has caused enough confusion in kitchens that I feel compelled to open the file properly. Chili powder and chili seasoning are not the same thing. Chili powder is one ingredient. Chili seasoning is a full operation, and those little store-bought packets love to act important for something that disappears into one Dutch oven and costs way more than it should. So we're gonna make our own. This is the full mix. 8 tablespoons of chili powder, 4 tablespoons of ground cumin, 5 tablespoons of brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder and onion powder, 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika, dried oregano, salt, and 1 teaspoon of black pepper. Yeah, it's a generous amount of chili powder because this is not a dusting. This is seasoning for an entire pot. The chili powder and the cumin give it a depth, an earthy backbone. The brown sugar smooths out the acid from the tomatoes, and the rest of the seasonings round everything out so it tastes like somebody actually meant to cook it. It's warm, it's savory, it's balanced, and built for a big enough pot to actually matter. You can can this and save the weeknight any day you want. Alright, get your phones back out and steal this one too. Take a picture in 3, 2, 1. The reason I make a full jar of this is because when I make chili, I'm not making a quaint little pot for a crisp autumn evening. I'm making enough to feed a crowd, fill my freezer, put in the canner, and make a future dinner a whole lot less dramatic. I pour this one straight into my Dutch oven with the meat, the beans, the tomatoes, and it does exactly what it's supposed to. All that deep earthy flavor, that little bit of sweetness and warmth and balance, it just handles the whole pot like it knows its assignment. A few pans of cornbread on the side, and this is one of those meals that feels cozy, stretches a budget, and makes a ridiculous amount of food without tasting like budget food. 4 jars down, and let's keep this assembly line moving. After those darker, smokier blends, we're gonna need a hard pivot. Blend number 5 is Greek seasoning, and this one it's bright and herby and a whole lot lighter on its feet. Now, one thing I need to note for the record, most store-bought Greek blends lead with salt like they're doing you a personal favor, and I'm not paying premium prices for flavored salt. I want herbs, so here's the mix. 4 tablespoons of dried oregano, 2 tablespoons of dried basil, a teaspoon of onion powder, garlic powder, and dried dill, a 1/2 teaspoon of dried thyme, 2 tablespoons of crushed rosemary, 1 teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of black pepper. This is why it ends up tasting so fresh. The oregano and the basil do most of the heavy lifting, and the rosemary gives it a sturdier, almost piney backbone, and the dill keeps everything from getting flat or sleepy. It wakes up the food. This is the blend that I reach for when I want dinner to feel lighter, cleaner, less like it needs a nap afterwards. It's fantastic on grilled chicken, roasted potatoes, and anything headed toward a quick yogurt marinade. If you want the exact formula, grab your phone and take a picture in 3, 2, 1. Moving right along to blend number 6, and this one is a heavyweight. This is the homemade barbecue seasoning, and if you've ever looked at fancy store-bought barbecue rubs and thought, why is this tiny jar $10? The answer is usually brown sugar as a publicist. So we're making our own. The mix is 2 tablespoons of smoked paprika, a tablespoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of black pepper, 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder and onion powder, and a half a teaspoon of chili powder. That is the whole sweet, smoky balance right here. The brown sugar gives you caramelization, the smoked paprika brings in depth, and the garlic and onion do the background work. Chili powder gives it just enough warmth to keep it interesting without it turning into a fight. And yes, I've got kids in here helping with this one because it's basically foolproof. I don't mind the little spice on the counter with every scoop going into a bowl that's buying me time later. This is the exact rub that can make a completely ordinary Tuesday look suspiciously well handled. So get your phone ready and take a picture in 3, 2, 1. This is where that barbecue rub stops being a jar of promises and starts actually pulling some labor around here. I take these giant foil pans of cubed beef and work that seasoning into every bite like I mean it. The brown sugar is going to melt down and cook it so it gives you that dark, caramel, sticky crust that makes people think something was way more complicated than it actually is. And right here, we hit it with the barbecue sauce so it catches and clings and starts heading into that burnt end direction. You can pile this over rice, tuck it into buns, honestly just stand over the pan and just sample it without any regrets at all. This is one of my favorite things to eat. Before we charge back into half of the spice cabinet, I need to present the official Homegrown kitchen table seasoning superlatives, because some of these blends here have very strong personalities and, frankly, a documented history. So if you want to know which one causes the most family drama, which one is criminally underrated, and which one gets used far more than it gets credit for, go ahead and take a picture of the screen, or just pause it here for a second. Alright, halfway there. Next up is the Jamaican jerk seasoning, which, unlike this one, is not here to be subtle. A lot of store-bought jerk seasonings reduce down into salt and cayenne and then try to call it a day, which is lazy and inaccurate and frankly a little insulting. It's supposed to be layered, deep, warm, sharp, and a little wild around the edges. Here's the full mix: a tablespoon of onion powder and garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of cayenne pepper, salt, black pepper, thyme, and granulated sugar, a teaspoon of allspice, dried parsley, and paprika. Oh my gosh, I have a cat hair on my face and it's making me absolutely crazy. Oh, and it's on my nose too. So I just look like a crazy person sitting in my closet recording this voiceover while trying to pick a random invisible hair off my nose. Okay, where was I? We were on, I think we finished all of the teaspoons. So then you're going to do a half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes, ground cinnamon, ground nutmeg, ground cloves, and a fourth of a teaspoon of ground cumin. So yeah, there's definitely more heat here between the cayenne and the black pepper and the red pepper flakes. But the reason this blend actually tastes like something is the warm spice situation. It's all that allspice, cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves that give it that deep, unmistakable jerk flavor that feels a little smoky, a little sweet, a little fiery, and much more interesting than any plain heat ever could. This is the kind of blend that makes a very strong entrance, and I respect that in a seasoning. Jerk salmon is one of my favorite things to eat. Now grab your phone and take a picture of this jerk seasoning recipe in 3, 2, 1. Up next, we have Old Bay style seafood seasoning. And to be clear, this is not me trying to improve on an icon. Old Bay seasoning is Old Bay seasoning. I'm simply very attached to the idea of controlling my own salt level and not paying extra for a yellow can with branding confidence. So here's the mix: 4 teaspoons of celery salt, 1 teaspoon of ground mustard, 2 teaspoons of sweet paprika, a half a teaspoon of ground up bay leaves, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, an eighth of a teaspoon of ground ginger, a 1/16 of a teaspoon of cayenne, ground cloves, ground cardamom, and ground cinnamon. This one is different than everything else in my spice cabinet. The celery salt and mustard give it a really sharp, savory bite. The bay and paprika make it taste unmistakably seafood friendly, and then those tiny warm spices in the background make the whole thing taste much more interesting than people would expect. And even if you're not making seafood every week, don't skip this jar. This is the kind of blend that quietly shows up on roasted potato wedges, corn, deviled eggs, anything that you need to have just a touch of personality. Get your phone ready and take a picture in 3, 2, 1. And because this is an assembly line and not a hostage situation, we are taking a mandatory coffee break. I do not do big prep days like this without caffeine and a quick pantry check to make sure all the jars are where they belong and the operation is still holding. And then we're back to work. So the jar is full, and this is where the whole system kind of starts paying rent. Because the seasoning blends are nice in theory, but the real question is whether they can actually carry dinner when you're feeding a house full of people and everybody expects to eat roughly at the same time. And this is what it looks like for me. I've got a huge foil pan of chicken legs. If I'm roasting a whole family-sized batch of chicken, I want every piece to come out with color and flavor and enough smoky sweet payoff that nobody's going to stand there asking what else there is to eat. Cue the 5-year-old. Then on another pan, I've got asparagus, which gets a simpler treatment. We're going to do olive oil, garlic, salt, pepper, nothing dramatic, and a touch of balsamic vinegar. And this is kind of the point. When the main protein carries a lot of the dinner, the vegetables can calm down and do their job without competing for attention, like they're auditioning for lead roles. Cue my children's theater references here. The corn gets more of a fun treatment. I take the same smoky sweet barbecue seasoning and dust it right over the corn before it roasts because that blend on the corn is one of those tiny kitchen moves that almost feels unfair. It caramelizes a little, gets smoky and savory, and suddenly a side dish is pulling way more weight than I expected it to. Everything goes into the oven, but here's another trick that kind of saves my sanity on cooking days. When the pan's finished, I will use the bottom drawer of the oven in a way that apparently it was not intended to be used, which who knew? I use more of a warming drawer because once the oven is already hot, that little drawer is warm too, but not going to cook anything. So once part of dinner is done, I can store it down there, and then when everything else is done, I can go ahead and serve it at the same time and nothing is cold. After dinner's over, I'll go ahead and store my foil pans down there. But this makes a big difference when I'm cooking a lot of food for, a lot of people. And while I am so proud of this dinner because that chicken has an incredible crust and the veggies are perfectly roasted, you're still going to get a pure, honest review from your kids.
Spicy.
It is not.
It's genius.
No, it's not.
Look at that skin. Ooh.
We're rounding the corner, and this one has a lot more going on than plain heat. This is Cajun seasoning. The most store-bought versions are basically salt with a temper tantrum. They hit you with cayenne, call it bold, and then move on. And I'm not interested in paying for a jar of salt with delusions of grandeur. So we're going to make the real thing. We're going to start with 2 teaspoons of paprika and a tablespoon of garlic powder because this one needs body before it brings the heat. Then you're going to add in 2 teaspoons of onion powder and a teaspoon and a half of salt. For the herby side of it, you want a teaspoon of dried oregano and dried thyme. Then you're going to hit it with a teaspoon of black pepper and cayenne pepper, then a half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes. This is the jar that gives dinner a little more nerve. So if you're watching this on your TV right now, grab your phone and take a picture of the Cajun formula in 3, 2, 1. The paprika gives it a body, the garlic and the onion keep it grounded, and then you have your black pepper, cayenne, and red pepper, bringing the heat without letting that heat be an entire personality. Bold, peppery, savory, warm, and not just hot for the sake of being loud. Now let me show you the payoff. I decided to use a very generous scoop of this to season our beef enchiladas. So everybody actually gets to dig into these enchiladas. I am officially queen of the house. And that's kind of the point of keeping these jars on hand. You're not starting from scratch every time, and you can be the queen of seasoning flavor. Up next, this one sometimes gets confused with Cajun seasoning, even though it's doing a totally different job. This is blackening seasoning, and it is built for crust. Cajun seasoning is more peppery and herb forward, where blackening seasoning is darker, smokier, and designed to hit a hot pan and create that deep, savory exterior, while the inside stays very juicy. Here's your mix. 2 tablespoons of sweet paprika and smoked paprika, then 2 tablespoons of cumin, and brown sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, dried oregano, garlic powder, and onion powder, 1 teaspoon of chili powder, and half a teaspoon of cayenne. And this is why it works. The sweet and smoked paprika gives it both color and depth, whereas the cumin makes it warmer and more grounded. The brown sugar helps with that darker outer crust, and the garlic, onion, oregano, chili powder, cayenne just round it all out so it tastes very bold instead of just burnt. This is one of those blends that makes the food look dramatic in the best way possible. This sound right here is exactly what you want. And yes, it's going to throw some smoke. Don't panic. That's not dinner failing. That is that crust developing. Because the whole point of blackening seasoning is to get that dark, flavorful exterior. So once the spices all hit that really hot pan, it's going to start caramelizing and build you that really deep, gorgeous crust on the outside, and then everything on the inside is going to stay juicy. You flip it and suddenly it looks like you ordered from somewhere with cloth napkins and a very overconfident menu. What I like about this is that it gives you that really big payoff without needing much work from me. A side of green beans, a little sweet potato puree, and dinner is done. If dinner needs a darker, bolder crust, this is the jar you want. Grab your phone and take a picture of the blackening formula in 3, 2, 1. At this point, my counters are a mess. Coffee is getting cold, and the cabinet is finally starting to look exactly the way I want to. So let's keep going. We are almost at the finishing line, and blend number 11 is homemade Italian seasoning. My stomach is literally growling right now because I am watching my own food being cooked and I'm like, dang, that looks so good. So if you hear some rumbling in the background, I do apologize for my stomach's very rude interruptions. This blend, the Italian seasoning, is a little bit quieter than the others, but don't underestimate it. A good Italian blend is one of those jars that ends up doing far more work than it ever gets credit for. And a lot of store-bought versions are mostly herb fragrance and vague disappointment. I want actual herbs. I want flavor. I want the jar to pull its weight. So here's the full mix. 2 tablespoons of basil, a tablespoon of oregano, rosemary, marjoram, and thyme, a teaspoon of red pepper flakes if you want a little heat. This is exactly the kind of thing I mean when I say that these jars pull more weight than people think that they do. You're not chopping up fresh herbs on a random weeknight. You're not trying to invent flavor from scratch while you're tired and your coffee is cold. You are literally pulling a jar off of a shelf, shaking some confidence onto a sheet pan, and moving on with your life. By the time that these come out, the edges are going to be crisp, the centers are going to be soft, the herbs are going to be toasted, and suddenly you have a tray of potatoes that looks like it belonged to a much bigger plan than what can I make that's super fast in this kitchen and allows me to sit down at the end of a long day. So this is the blend that I'm going to want on my spaghetti nights, my meatloaf, my marinara, my garlic bread, roasted vegetables, and cue my stomach growling again. Did I mention I love food? And honestly, I'm gonna respect a side dish that can do that without becoming very needy. No one likes a needy side dish. If you want the exact herb ratio for those spaghetti nights, then you're gonna wanna take a picture in 3, 2, 1. Finally, we've reached the jar that gets treated less like seasoning and more like a household utility. The S tier champion of this entire cabinet, homemade ranch powder. Ranch is an infrastructure. It goes on potatoes, vegetables, chicken, wraps, popcorn, pasta salad, and anything that my child hold in one hand and negotiate with in the other. Here is the actual formula. We're going to start with 1/3 cup of dry buttermilk powder, and then a tablespoon of garlic powder and a tablespoon of onion powder. Then we're going to bring in 2 teaspoons of dried parsley, a teaspoon and a half of dried dill, and 1 to 1.5 teaspoons of dried chives, just depending on how hard you want the ranch to lean into itself. Then we're going to add in a teaspoon of sea salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of sugar, a 1/2 teaspoon of tarragon, and a 1/4 teaspoon of cracked black pepper. That's what's going to make this one work. The buttermilk powder gives it that tangy ranch backbone. The garlic and onion are going to do the heavy lifting, and then all your other herbs and seasonings are going to come into the blend and give it life instead of just chalky white sadness. Then that little bit of sugar rounds it out, so it's going to taste balanced instead of flat. This is why I make a giant jar. Not a cute amount, but a real amount. Enough to survive dip, sheet pan dinners, roasted vegetables, and an ongoing ranch-related lawlessness that is related to my family life. If you want the exact formula of this jar that quietly runs basically half of the snack economy in my home, grab your phone and take a picture of this in 3, 2, 1. One of the reasons I like making it myself is control. I can alter exactly what goes into it. It's not mystery dust. It's not a filler parade. No tiny packets acting like they're holding state secrets. The ingredients I choose mix on purpose, taste the way I want them to. One of my absolute favorite ways to use ranch powder is as a secret ingredient in beef au jus sandwiches. And I'm telling you right now, it has no business working this well. That tangy, herby, savory mix goes straight in with the beef and all the other richness of slow-cooked flavors. And instead of tasting obvious like ranch, it just makes the whole thing deeper and rounded and just wildly addictive. It's one of those ingredients that doesn't have to announce itself. It just quietly stays there and makes everything taste better, which is an elegant kind of power. Then you pile that shredded beef onto a toasted roll, spoon it over some juices, and suddenly you have one of those dinners that makes people go quiet for a minute because they're too busy eating to say anything useful. It's exactly why I want to keep a giant jar of ranch powder on hand. Not because I'm making cute little packets of dip, but because I want tricks like this. I want to make sandwiches taste like they came from a restaurant. I want to enjoy food because life is too short to eat boring food. Now listen, if you've been standing in front of your TV taking 12 separate pictures like a very committed pantry detective, I have an easier option for you. I put all 12 of these recipe graphics into one printable PDF for my YouTube channel members, so if you want the whole set in one place, you can hit the join button below, download it, and stack it inside of your own spice cabinet where it'll be there to help you at any time that you need it. Because taking screenshots work, but having one clean cheat sheet is absolutely better. And while I'm already here making half of the pantry from scratch again, I'm handing you one more thing that saves me money and time over and over again: homemade beef stock powder. Because store-bought bouillon has gotten wildly comfortable with charging way too much for way too little. And yeah, I'm absolutely going to be petty about it. If I can make a better version myself for pennies, I'm going to do that and sleep just fine. Here's the mix: half a cup of nutritional yeast, 2 tablespoons of mushroom powder, 3 tablespoons of onion powder, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of thyme, oregano, paprika, and celery seeds, and a teaspoon of salt. One afternoon of work, 12 jars filled, and suddenly the next stretch of dinner is not hanging on by a thread. And you're not standing in front of your pantry every night waiting for a revelation. You're not going to open random packets hoping for character development. You have actual flavor on the shelf ready to go. That's the part that people miss. It's not just about spices, it's about removing dinner friction. It's about buying your future self some breathing room. It's about turning dinner from a daily interruption into something that you've already got handled. And once the jars are in place, everything else starts moving differently. Chicken has a plan, rice has a plan, potatoes have a plan, sandwiches have a plan, basically everything has a plan. That is what one solid pantry setup can do. It doesn't make life perfect, it just makes dinner a whole lot less annoying, and honestly, that gets my respect. But this is only half of the operation. Now that the cabinet is loaded, the next obvious step is using it. So click the video right here where I take these exact 12 blends and use them to prep over 3 months of chicken dinners in one afternoon. Because a spice cabinet is nice to have, but a full freezer is absolutely better. I'll see you there.